A piercing scream broke the silence of the small apartment, echoing against the cracked walls like a wound torn open. Rachel said, "Please, don't do this in front of Emma." Her arms wrapped tightly around her daughter, as if shielding her from invisible daggers. Mark's face twisted with rage, his voice low yet cutting. "Mark said you'll regret shutting me out." He stormed past them, the slam of the door rattling picture frames and shaking Rachel's core. Emma whimpered against her chest, her small fingers digging into Rachel's sweater. The distant wail of sirens outside blended with the chaos inside, amplifying her panic. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears, faster than her thoughts could catch up. This wasn't just another argument. Something inside had been broken beyond repair. Rachel said, "I swear I'll keep you safe," though doubt clawed at her. Betrayal had come like a thief, stealing her fragile peace. In that moment, her life pivoted, dragging her into a storm she could not escape. Rachel sat against the wall long after Mark had gone, the echo of the slammed door replaying like a cruel soundtrack in her mind. Emma's breathing steadied, soft and shallow, but Rachel's chest still heaved. She whispered, "It's just us now," as if saying it aloud would make it true. The shadows in the room loomed taller, heavy with the weight of what had happened. The sirens outside faded, but the silence felt worse, suffocating. Emma stirred, her small voice muffled. Emma said, "Mommy, is he coming back?" Rachel's throat tightened, her voice barely a whisper. Rachel said, "No baby, not tonight." Her heart sank as she thought about what tomorrow might bring. The future no longer stretched like a path. It was a cliff edge. Every muscle in her body ached, but she knew she couldn't rest. Survival had taken a new shape tonight, and she wasn't sure she had the strength to face it. Morning crept in without mercy, pale light cutting through blinds like knives. Rachel stirred awake on the couch. Emma curled against her, both still in yesterday's clothes. Her mind replayed Mark's threats, each word sharper in daylight. Rachel said, "You deserve better than this," her eyes locked on Emma's sleeping face. She rose carefully, limbs stiff, and padded to the kitchen. The sink overflowed with dishes, reminders of exhaustion. A calendar on the wall showed custody hearings circled in red. Her stomach twisted as she thought of standing in court alone. Emma's voice broke the silence, soft yet clear. Emma said, "Mommy, are we okay?" Rachel smiled weakly, hiding her fear. Rachel said, "We're stronger than last night." But in truth, she wasn't sure. The day had begun, and with it, the battle to hold everything together. Rachel rushed through her morning routine, tension lining every movement. She packed Emma's school bag while juggling her own work documents, her mind racing. The kettle whistled shrilly, echoing her nerves. Emma sat quietly, holding a worn stuffed bear. Rachel crouched beside her, brushing hair from Emma's face. Rachel said, "You're my brave girl." Emma smiled faintly, but her eyes carried questions she couldn't ask. The phone buzzed on the counter, Mark's name flashing. Rachel froze, pulse spiking. She ignored it, shoving the phone into a drawer, the act feeling like rebellion and defeat in one. She kissed Emma's forehead, trying to mask the quake in her voice. Rachel said, "We've got this." Her hand lingered longer than usual, as though time itself might take her child away. The world outside was waiting, sharp and unforgiving. Outside, the morning air bit cold, though the sun shone weakly. Rachel walked Emma to school, her hand gripping her daughter's as though tethered by survival. The street buzzed with life, but Rachel felt detached, her mind trapped in last night's storm. Emma skipped a little, trying to keep things normal. Emma said, "Can we get ice cream later?" Rachel forced a smile, her voice thin. Rachel said, "Of course." Each word felt like a fragile bridge over an abyss. Other parents chatted nearby, their laughter twisting into reminders of what she had lost. She kissed Emma at the gate, watching her run inside with her backpack bouncing. Rachel's chest ached with pride and sorrow. Alone now, she lingered at the fence, her breath catching. She whispered, "I'll fight for you, no matter the cost." It was both a vow and a prayer. Rachel hurried into her office, her steps quick, but her mind slower, heavy with dread. Her manager's gaze followed her like a shadow, sharp and unyielding. She whispered under her breath, "Don't give them a reason." Papers spilled from her bag as she fumbled, a symbol of her unraveling control. Colleagues whispered in corners, their words fragments of judgment she didn't need to hear. The deadline looming on her desk felt like a weight she couldn't carry. She thought of Emma's smile this morning, bright but fragile, and guilt swelled in her chest. Rachel said, "I can't lose this job." Yet the more she told herself, the more fragile it sounded. Mark's threats still echoed, now clashing with the risk of unemployment. Her life was becoming a chessboard, every move dangerous, every mistake irreversible. Her jaw tightened as she typed, desperation laced in every keystroke. Lunch break arrived, but Rachel couldn't eat, her stomach knotted with unease. She sat in the corner of the break room, phone buzzing with unanswered calls. The name Mark glowed on the screen like a curse. Her best friend Sarah slid into the seat across from her, eyes filled with worry. Sarah said, "You can't keep running yourself empty." Rachel forced a smile, voice hollow. Rachel said, "I don't have a choice." Sarah reached out, her hand steady while Rachel's trembled. The weight of secrets pressed down. Rachel hadn't told Sarah about the custody date. She feared even her closest ally might judge her weakness. The clock ticked, each second louder than the last, reminding her she was running out of time. She glanced at Sarah's patient face and wondered if leaning on her would mean salvation or betrayal. Evening rain pattered against the apartment windows, and Rachel sat at the table with Emma's homework spread out. Emma scribbled with crayons while Rachel pretended to focus on bills stacked beside her. Her eyes darted to eviction notices, red stamps shouting louder than the storm outside. Emma lifted her drawing proudly, a stick figure family holding hands. Emma said, "Look, Mommy, it's us." Rachel's throat caught, forcing a smile that masked her fear. She said, "It's beautiful, baby." The truth mocked her from the unpaid bills, threatening to take that simple joy away. She imagined Mark's smirk if she failed to provide. Lightning cracked, and Rachel whispered to herself, "I can't let him win." The storm outside mirrored the storm within. Her love for Emma burned steady, but survival was slipping further out of reach. The following morning, Rachel met with her supervisor in a glass-walled conference room. He leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, voice clipped. Supervisor said, "Your performance has slipped. This can't continue." Rachel's heart pounded, her palms damp as she forced herself to speak. Rachel said, "I've been handling personal issues, but I promise, it won't affect my work." His eyes narrowed, unmoved. The glass walls felt like prison bars, every colleague outside watching her fail. Her pulse raced, imagining the humiliation of being fired. The thought of losing her paycheck and custody in the same breath twisted her gut. She kept her back straight, voice steady, though inside she cracked. Rachel said, "Please, I need this job." The words tasted like desperation, yet there was no pride left to hold on to. Rachel walked home that night, the city alive but distant. Streetlights flickered as cars whooshed past, none of them hers. Her heels clicked against cracked pavement, each step heavier than the last. She whispered, "Keep going," as though her body needed instructions. Her phone buzzed again, Mark's name like a dagger on the screen. She didn't answer, shoving it deep into her coat pocket. Neon signs glared down, indifferent witnesses to her unraveling life. Her reflection in a shop window showed someone she barely recognized, haunted eyes, weary face, but still standing. She thought of Emma asleep at home, a fragile anchor pulling her back from collapse. Rachel said softly, "I'll make it through this." The words felt fragile, but under the flickering light, they became a vow. The lawyer's office smelled of stale paper and desperation. Rachel sat stiff in the chair, her knuckles white around a folder of custody documents. Across from her, Mark leaned back, smugness dripping from every word. Mark said, "You'll never win this. Judges hate unstable mothers." His smirk cut deep, every syllable a weapon. Rachel's chest tightened, but she held her head high. Rachel said, "Emma needs stability, not your chaos." His laugh echoed, sharp as glass. Rachel stared at the paperwork, every line a battlefield she hadn't chosen. The lawyer spoke calmly, but the weight of impending hearings pressed down like lead. Rachel whispered inside her mind, "I can't let him take her." She masked her fear, but her eyes betrayed the storm. The room became a cage, and Mark its predator, circling her resolve with poisonous words. Back home, Rachel sat across from Sarah, her best friend, the weight of betrayal pressing on her tongue. Sarah stirred her coffee nervously, eyes darting away. Rachel said, "You knew he'd file for custody, didn't you?" Sarah's silence answered before her lips could. Rachel's chest constricted, rage and heartbreak colliding. Sarah said softly, "He promised, he just wanted to talk." The words stung like fire. Rachel slammed her hand on the table, Emma's laughter drifting faintly from her bedroom, oblivious. Rachel said, "You let him near us. Do you know what you've done?" Tears brimmed, not of weakness but fury. Trust cracked like shattered glass, the one ally she thought she had slipping away. The room grew smaller, suffocating with silence too heavy to break. That night Rachel found herself pacing the small living room, the air thick with dread. Emma watched quietly from the couch, stuffed bear clutched tight. Emma said, "Mommy, why are you mad?" Rachel froze, kneeling down, forcing a calm voice. Rachel said, "I'm not mad at you, baby. I'm fighting for us." Emma's big eyes searched her face, wise beyond 6 years, sensing the storm behind her mother's mask. Rachel hugged her, inhaling the scent of crayons and shampoo, clinging to the only reason she had left to keep fighting. Outside, thunder rolled, echoing the turmoil within. The clock ticked louder, each second a reminder of the battle ahead. Rachel whispered into Emma's hair, "I promise I'll never let him take you." The promise felt fragile, but it was all she had. The courtroom loomed ahead, even in her dreams, haunting her nights. Rachel sat in bed, staring at ceiling cracks as moonlight spilled through blinds. Sleep eluded her, each thought a battlefield replay. Mark's voice lingered, Sarah's betrayal replayed, the future twisted in uncertainty. She rolled to her side, clutching Emma's small blanket, inhaling the faint scent of innocence. Rachel whispered, "I can't fall apart now." The city hummed outside, indifferent to her unraveling. Each night felt like training for the war ahead, her body restless, her heart weary. She pressed her hands together, not sure if it was prayer or desperation. Tomorrow promised nothing but more weight to carry. Still, she whispered again, softer this time, "We'll survive." In silence, she chose resolve over collapse. The next day, Rachel walked into the courthouse for a preliminary meeting, her pulse hammering. The marble floors echoed her shaky steps. Mark waited near the entrance, sharp suit smug as ever. He said, "This is where I win." His arrogance wrapped around the hall like poison. Rachel kept her eyes forward, whispering to herself, "Don't give him the power." The judge's assistant greeted her, voice professional but distant. Rachel felt invisible, like the walls themselves judged her worth. Emma's face flashed in her mind, anchoring her steps. She squared her shoulders, forcing strength she didn't feel. Rachel said under her breath, "For her." The courthouse doors closed behind her with a heavy thud, sealing her fate into motion. There was no turning back. Rachel sat on the couch with Sarah, the silence between them heavy but necessary. The hurt from betrayal lingered, yet Sarah's eyes carried guilt that begged forgiveness. Sarah said, "I never wanted to hurt you." Rachel looked down, her voice low but sharp. Rachel said, "You let him in. That nearly destroyed me." Sarah's lips trembled, words failing her. The weight of years of friendship cracked under the strain. Emma's laughter drifted faintly from her bedroom, a reminder that life still carried on outside this storm. Rachel rubbed her temples, the ache of exhaustion pulling her down. She whispered, "I need someone I can trust." Sarah reached out, her hand tentative. Sarah said, "Then let me prove I can be that person again." The air thickened with hesitation, But Rachel's heart longed for a friend, even as her mind screamed caution. The next day Rachel met Sarah at a diner, a neutral ground to rebuild fragile trust. Rain streaked the windows while coffee steamed between them. Rachel said, "If we do this, there's no room for lies." Sarah nodded, her eyes steadier now. Sarah said, "I'll stand with you, no matter what happens." The words sounded sincere, though Rachel's chest tightened with doubt. The waitress passed by, her casual cheer a jarring contrast to the gravity at their table. Rachel studied Sarah, searching for cracks in her promise. Silence stretched, broken only by clinking cups. Rachel said softly, "I want to believe you." The storm outside mirrored the storm between them, calm possible, but fragile. Sarah reached across the table, and this time Rachel didn't pull away. For the first time in weeks, the tension eased slightly. Rachel walked Emma home from school when a man stepped from the shadows, familiar yet distant. Her heart skipped. Daniel, her brother she hadn't seen in 10 years. Daniel said, "Rachel, it's me." His voice carried a mix of regret and urgency. Rachel froze, her grip on Emma's hand tightening. Rachel said, "Why now?" Daniel's eyes softened, guilt etched into his worn face. Daniel said, "Because you need me." The words sliced through her guarded heart. Emma looked up, confused, her innocence clashing with this sudden reunion. Rachel's chest filled with questions, suspicion heavy in her gaze. She whispered, "You left when I needed you most." The street hummed with distant traffic, but the moment felt frozen in time. Her past had just returned, and with it, 1,000 unhealed wounds. Rachel sat across from Daniel in her apartment, the room thick with history unspoken. Emma slept in her room, leaving the siblings alone. Rachel said, "You don't just walk back into our lives." Daniel's eyes lowered, his voice heavy. Daniel said, "I've been watching from afar. I know about the custody fight." Anger surged in her chest, memories of abandonment colliding with his sudden concern. Rachel whispered, "You weren't there when Mom died. You weren't there when I needed you most." Daniel's jaw clenched, guilt flashing in his eyes. Daniel said, "I can help now, if you'll let me." Rachel's heart wavered, torn between fury and longing for family. The silence stretched, carrying decades of pain and a glimmer of something else, hope. Later that night, Rachel stood at the window, staring into the city lights, Daniel's words replaying in her mind. He had offered support, but trust came hard. She whispered to herself, "Do I let him back in?" Behind her, Daniel tucked a blanket over sleeping Emma, a gesture both tender and haunting. The sight pierced Rachel's heart, proof that he cared, yet too late for the years already lost. Rachel said softly, "She deserves family." The words tasted uncertain, yet true. Daniel stepped into the doorway, hesitant, waiting for her decision. The hum of traffic below filled the silence between them. Rachel's reflection in the glass looked older, weary, but steadier. She whispered, "Maybe this time will be different." It was not forgiveness, not yet, but a thread of possibility. Rachel sat at the kitchen table with Daniel, silence stretching like an old scar. He finally spoke, his voice low. Daniel said, "You were never alone. I've been sending money for years." Her heart skipped, confusion mixing with anger. Rachel said, "Money isn't love. Where were you when I needed a brother?" His eyes dropped, guilt carving lines deeper in his face. He whispered, "I was drowning in my own failures." The truth felt both hollow and shallow. Rachel's hands trembled as Emma's laughter carried from her room, fragile and pure. She said quietly, "You don't get to walk in now and erase the pain." The words echoed heavy, but Daniel's eyes didn't waver. He said, "I came back because I refused to fail you again." Rachel's chest tightened, torn between fury and hope. Later that night, Rachel pulled out an old box from the closet, photographs spilling like ghosts. She held a picture of her and Daniel as children, smiling with innocence long gone. Rachel whispered, "We had each other once." Daniel sat across the room, watching silently, regret heavy in his eyes. He said softly, I wanted to come back sooner, but I thought you hated me. Her throat ached with the weight of old memories. She said, I hated being left. Emma stirred in the next room, her small footsteps padding closer. She peeked in, holding her bear. Emma said, Who's he, Mommy? Rachel froze, breath catching. Daniel's voice cracked as he answered, I'm family. The word lingered in the air like both a blessing and a curse. The next day Rachel met Sarah at the park, leaves rustling under a gray sky. Rachel said, Daniel's back. He claims he wants to help. Sarah's brow furrowed, her voice cautious. Sarah said, Do you trust him? Rachel hesitated, her heart torn. She whispered, I don't know anymore. Sarah squeezed her hand, firm but gentle. Sarah said, You can't fight this war alone, but don't hand your trust to someone who's broken it before. Rachel's eyes welled, emotions tangling between anger, relief, and confusion. The children's laughter around them clashed with her inner turmoil. Emma ran ahead, carefree, unaware of the storm swirling in her mother's chest. Rachel whispered, I just want her safe. The confession felt like a fragile truth she could no longer hide. Rachel returned home to find Daniel waiting with documents spread across the table. He said, I've gathered evidence against Mark. Records he didn't want you to see. Her breath caught as she scanned the papers, financial statements revealing deceit. Rachel said, This could change everything. Daniel nodded, his tone steady. Daniel said, But it comes at a price. You'll have to face truths about him, and yourself. Her chest tightened, the fear of exposure heavier than hope. She whispered, I've lived with shame long enough. The sound of rain tapped the windows, echoing her pounding heart. She stared at Daniel, unsure if his help was salvation or another betrayal waiting to unfold. Still, the path forward shifted. The battle had gained new weapons and new scars. That night, Rachel stood by Emma's bedside, watching her daughter's peaceful sleep. Emma clutched her bear, her small chest rising steadily. Rachel whispered, Everything I do is for you. Behind her, Daniel lingered in the doorway, silent but present. The tension between them softened, replaced by something fragile, possibility. Rachel turned, her voice quiet but firm. Rachel said, If you betray us again, I won't forgive you. Daniel's eyes glistened with remorse, his voice steady. Daniel said, I won't walk away this time. The promise hung heavy in the dim light. Rachel brushed Emma's hair, the child's innocence a reminder of what was at stake. For the first time, hope flickered beneath the weight of fear, fragile, but alive. The courthouse buzzed with tension as Rachel clutched Emma's drawing in her hand like armor. Mark strutted past, his smirk sharpened by his suit. He whispered, You'll lose everything. Rachel steadied her breath, whispering back, Not today. The judge entered, silence crashing over the room. Rachel's lawyer adjusted papers, calm but stern. The weight of 100 eyes pressed down on her shoulders. She thought of Emma's soft voice last night, and whispered inside, This is for her. Fear burned, but love steadied her trembling hands. Mark's lawyer stood tall, his voice cutting. Lawyers said, She cannot provide stability. Rachel clenched her fists under the table, nails biting into skin. Her lawyer rose calmly. Lawyer said, The evidence tells a different story. Papers slid across the bench, exposing Mark's hidden debts. Mark's smirk faltered, his jaw tightening. Rachel's eyes burned with a mix of fear and triumph. She thought finally, Truth has teeth. The silence that followed felt electric, the judge's eyes shifting from paper to Mark, the balance beginning to tilt. Rachel took the stand, her heart hammering louder than her words. Lawyer said, Why do you believe your child belongs with you? Rachel steadied herself, eyes wet, but strong. Rachel said, Because she is my world. Every night I fought to keep her safe, even when I had nothing. Her voice cracked, but truth poured raw. Mark scoffed, muttering loud enough for the room to hear. Rachel said firmly, I may be imperfect, but I will never abandon her. The silence that followed was heavier than any gavel strike. Daniel entered unexpectedly, sworn in as a witness. Rachel's breath caught as he looked at her, silent reassurance in his eyes. Daniel said, "Mark isn't what he pretends to be. I've seen his dealings, I have records." Gasps rippled through the room. Mark's face drained, his mask cracking. Rachel whispered inside, "You came through." For the first time, hope surged stronger than fear. The judge leaned forward, studying Daniel's words like weights on a scale. The truth was no longer buried. It stood in the open, undeniable. The gavel struck, sharp and final. Judge said, "Custody granted to the mother." Rachel's breath collapsed into a sob, relief flooding every vein. Mark rose in fury, shouting protests, but the bailiff restrained him. Rachel clutched the drawing tighter, whispering, "We did it." She glanced back at Daniel, who nodded quietly. For the first time in years, she felt the ground beneath her feet. She thought of Emma's face when she told her the news, and tears streamed freely. Victory wasn't perfect, but it was theirs, and it was enough. Rachel walked out of the courthouse, the crisp evening air filling her lungs like freedom she hadn't tasted in years. Daniel walked beside her, silent but steady, while Emma clutched her hand tightly. Rachel said softly, "It's over, baby, we're safe now." Emma smiled, her innocence unbroken by the storm they'd survived. Daniel's eyes lingered on them, the weight of redemption etched across his face. Rachel's chest felt lighter, though scars remained. She whispered inside, "This isn't the end, it's the beginning of something new." At home, Rachel sat on the couch, Emma curled up asleep against her side. The apartment felt different, still small, still worn, but no longer suffocating. She stroked Emma's hair gently, whispering, "We made it." Daniel watched from the doorway, unsure if he belonged but hopeful. Rachel met his gaze, her voice steady. Rachel said, "If you're staying, then stay for real." Daniel nodded, a promise etched in silence. The air hummed with fragile peace. Rachel exhaled, letting go of years of fear. For once the night felt safe. The next morning, Rachel brewed coffee, sunlight streaming through the window. Emma bounded into the kitchen, full of laughter. Emma said, "Can we celebrate today?" Rachel smiled, her heart swelling. Rachel said, "Yes, we deserve it." Daniel set plates on the table, his movements tentative but steady. For the first time, the kitchen filled with the hum of family, imperfect yet whole. Rachel thought, this is what fighting was for. The scent of coffee and pancakes mingled with hope, fragile but real. Later that day, Rachel walked Emma to the park, the air crisp with promise. Children's laughter echoed as Emma ran ahead, her backpack bouncing. Rachel sat on a bench, watching her daughter play freely. The weight of years finally lifted. Daniel joined her, his presence less of a shadow now. Rachel said, "She's happy again." Daniel nodded, his eyes soft. Rachel leaned back, letting the sun warm her face. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe that tomorrow could be brighter than yesterday. That evening, Rachel stood by Emma's bedroom door, listening to her daughter's steady breathing. The apartment was quiet, the silence now comforting instead of suffocating. Rachel touched the door lightly, whispering, "We'll be okay." She stepped inside, kissed Emma's forehead, and sat beside her. For the first time in years, her smile was real. She whispered to herself, "We're stronger now, and we'll never stop fighting." The promise echoed in her heart, not as desperation but as strength. Tomorrow remained uncertain, but she no longer feared it.